Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Good day, future social workers. Good day, everyone. This time, I will be presenting to you the helping relationship in the perspective of the social work profession. But before that, let me define relationship first. We've been hearing the word many times. In fact, the community has its own definition of relationship, wherein we tend to specify its basic definition based on the connection or interaction between two opposing sex. But we have to remember that relationship refers to the dynamic interaction between two or more individuals, regardless of sex or gender, sexual orientation, or any characteristics that every individual has. In the social work profession, the helping relationship is basically called as the client-worker relationship. It is specified because the relationship between the social worker and the client must be defined properly even before the client becomes eligible for the service. It is done in order to set boundaries that you as a client comes to the social worker and the relationship that must be formulated or must be formed is only limited to a professional relationship. The said relationship includes fullest involvement of and partnership of the client himself. That means the client-worker relationship emphasizes the participation and cooperation of the client in the duration of the helping process. We always have to be reminded that the social worker is present in the client's life to help himself to become better, not just solve his presenting problem, but teach that client how to solve problems similar, if not related, to the problem that he or she presented. Yes, our primary objective is to meet the needs of the client, and we always have to remember also that along the way, the social worker's job is to assist the client in the duration of the process in order for him or her to know how is he going to solve problems in the future. It is also the job of the social worker to gain the trust and confidence of the client in order for the helping relationship to be effective. The relationship must be accepting in the sense that the social worker must accept the client whoever he is, wherever he comes from or where he belongs, whatever his background is, and accepting the client because the client exists as a human being. The helping relationship is dynamic because basically client-worker relationship should be emotional rather than intellectual. Emotional in a sense that the client needs something to the social worker. The social worker must provide the needs of the client because it is not only the tangible materials that the client needs. And when the client presents the problem, it is important to note that it's not only the problem that he wants to present, but there are some emotions along the way that he might want to address or he needs to address because failure to do so, other problems may arise and the client will not be able to solve the problem again. So, as a result, the client will come to the social worker once again to ask for help. The relationship is purposeful because, in the first place, that kind of relationship will not be established if the client didn't come for help. So basically, there must be a goal that has to be reached. It is time limited because the relationship will be terminated whether we like it or not. And the termination of the relationship must be presented to the client at the start of the helping process. The relationship is unequal. because the worker and the client assumes different roles. Basically, the client receives the help, the worker provides the help in many different forms. The helping relationship or the social worker must be honest. He must have sincerity, integrity, and honor. He must also have the capacity to perceive what reality is. And you have to take note that there are two sides of reality: what the client believes in and what the situation is. The social worker must also be responsible, legally and ethically accountable to everything that happens in the duration of the helping process. That is why we have to follow some ethical considerations, which will be presented in the next presentation. Lastly, the helping relationship means, or the social worker exercises judgments based on the reality that the client believes, the reality that the situation or the real situation is, and how the social worker assesses the problem of the client based on the data that he or she has gathered. There are phases of helping relationship: the beginning, the middle, and the ending. In the beginning phase of the relationship, this is where the worker and the client size up each other, meaning the client will be identified if he or she will be eligible for the help, and the social worker will start to establish the relationship. If the client is eligible for the help, the communication will properly be established, the rules will be set, needs are expressed, acknowledged, and responded to. After the agreement, whether explicit or implicit, has been agreed upon, then the beginning phase will end. The middle phase is when the worker and client play their respective roles. They know their roles well. They assumes the responsibilities that goes along with the roles. They get to share their feelings and emotions, their problems and sentiments. I mean, in the part of the client, because the worker has no right to share his or her problem, especially if it is not related to the process. And the ending is the termination phase of the relationship. This happens if the goal is achieved, or it could also be a referral has been made because the agency or the worker cannot provide the needs of the client anymore, and some other reasons for termination, which has already been presented before. The following are the values of social work that the social worker needs to believe in and always remember, because it is very important in the process of giving the needs of the client. The reason why it is very important for the client to participate in the duration of the helping process is because of the belief that each person has the right to self-fulfillment, deriving his inherent capacity and trust toward that goal. That means accepting or recognizing that every person has its own capacity to think for himself, to decide for himself. The principle of self-determination is also being observed. And along with that self-fulfillment is the value that each person has the obligation as a member of society to seek ways of self-fulfillment that contribute to the common good, especially because we always believe that every individual has the capacity to share or to help other people in his or her own way. And the society has the obligation to facilitate the self-fulfillment of the individual and the right to enrichment through the contribution of its members. Always remember that no man is an island. We belong in a society wherein the problems that we have is interconnected and interrelated. No one will help each other, but each other. We also have to believe that as a social worker, it is our obligation and responsibility to help the client improve or develop his own capacity to solve his own problem or to satisfy his basic needs in order for him or her to know how to solve his own problem after the helping relationship or after the helping process. And in order to do that, we cannot do it alone. We need networks and linkages from different organizations, agencies, and other networks in order to help the client or the individual to facilitate his effort at self-realization. We also need to recognize that our agency do not have everything, and the resources of these social organizations must always be available in order for the client to develop himself and along the way help other people through him or her. These are the concepts that are being implied in the social work values that was just presented. Believing in the potentials and capacities of every human being or individual, that every individual is endowed with his or her intellectual ability to do things. It just needs to be improved or facilitated properly. Social responsibility means that as an individual member of the society, you are responsible to contribute to the common good of the society, and the society has also the obligation to provide something in order for each member to develop himself. Equal opportunities would mean the concept of fairness, social justice, wherein every individual has the right to be provided with their needs and their opportunity to be heard. And lastly, the concept of social provision simply means that providing social resources for the satisfaction of human needs is important in order for an individual to survive in this society. As what William Gordon said, the ultimate value of social work rests upon a conviction that it is good and desirable for man to fulfill his potential, to realize himself, and to balance this with equal effort to help others do the same. He means that every man may be different from his present situation and what he should have been or what he should be has she been provided with the opportunity to improve himself, to realize his own potential as a human being. This slide is dedicated especially to the social work principles as a sort of review and reminder for us, social workers and future social workers, that we have to adhere to these principles in order for us to be an effective social worker. Acceptance of people as they are, no matter who he is, whatever he does, wherever he comes from. We need to accept him as long as he or she comes for help. Participation of the client in problem solving, hence the client-worker relationship. Even in our everyday lives, you reflect about what you are getting every day. For example, the resources that you got or the resources that you are getting. If you can observe, those whom you provided much effort is more valuable to you than those which are just given to you. It's because the involvement of ourselves, of our beliefs, and on of our values is very important. Now, same goes to the problem solving helping process. If the client is participating well, there is a tendency that there is self-fulfillment and self-realization, and along the way learning will come naturally. Self-determination as a right of the client. Basically, yes. the social worker is not a spoon feeder. We are here to facilitate. It's still the client who provides the ideas, who provides the initiative. No, so what we do as social workers is to facilitate and guide our client and make sure that he or she is still on the right track in order for his problem to be solved or his needs to be met. Then we have individualization of clients. It's very common, believing that no two persons are alike. So no matter how similar the problems of the two clients, we still have to follow with the phases of helping relationship, the process of helping process, because we have to believe that along the way there are differences, and because of that difference, the service, or yes, the service that the client may need might be different, no? Or will be definitely different. And at all times, confidentiality has to be observed, with a special exemption that if the information that the client shares is or will be harmful to other people, then the informed consent will come in. The worker's self-awareness. At all times, the social worker has to be aware about who he is, what role he portrays during the duration of the process, and the principle of client-worker relationship. And we have to take note that once a client, always a client. As much as possible, we will not treat our client differently. Okay, there is no intimate relationship that has to be established, because the relationship that you have formed is purely a client-worker relationship. So for the profession's code of ethics, I will leave that to you as your assignment in order for you to explore and understand what are the ethics that our profession believes in. That's it. Thank you, everyone. I hope you learned something in this presentation. See you on the next one.